I just found out my wife secretly transferred $250, $0 of our family estate to her brother just weeks before filing for divorce. Now she's claiming ownership of our home and a 401k worth $400, $0. And the lawyer says it's a mess I don't know how to fight. I never thought I'd be the guy sitting here, staring at a bank statement, wondering how everything fell apart so quickly. It all started with a gut feeling, the kind you ignore until it's too late. My wife Emily had always been a bit of a bitch, sharp-tongued, manipulative, and never afraid to throw a tantrum if things didn't go her way. But I loved her, or at least I thought I did. We'd been together for over 10 years, married for 5, and I genuinely believed we were solid. That was until I found out she'd been cheating on me for months, and not just with some random guy but with her boss, a guy named Ryan who she'd been sneaking around with right under my nose. It hit me like a punch to the gut. The signs were there, but I refused to see them. She started working late, always had some excuse, client meetings, important calls, that kind of thing. She'd come home looking tired but wouldn't want to talk about where she'd been or who she'd been with. Then I noticed her phone was more secretive than ever. She'd hide it when I entered the room, change her passwords and delete texts. I caught her in lies more times than I could count, but I never had concrete proof until that one night. It was a random evening when I decided to check her phone. I don't know what prompted me, maybe a sixth sense or just pure frustration. I found a string of messages between her and Ryan, full of flirtatious crap and plans to meet up. The conversation made my blood boil. They talked about getting away, not letting anyone know, and how much they wanted each other. The worst part, she lied to my face about everything, told me she was just friends with him, that he was like a brother. Yeah, right. I confronted her that night. I was furious, trembling with rage and betrayal. I showed her the messages and her face went pale. She tried to deny it at first, then threw out some bullshit about how I was overreacting, that I was paranoid and jealous. She said Ryan was just a business acquaintance, that they'd never crossed the line. But I knew better. I could see the guilt in her eyes, the way she hesitated before denying things that she couldn't possibly deny once I had proof. That's when she started spinning her web of lies. She claimed I was imagining things, that I was paranoid because I didn't trust her anymore. She said I was controlling and jealous, that she deserved better than a man who accused her of cheating without proof. She called me insecure, said I was just projecting my insecurities onto her. But I wasn't blind. I saw how she looked at Ryan, how she'd sneak off to business meetings and come back with a glow I didn't recognize. I felt like I'd been punched in the stomach, like everything I believed about our marriage was a lie. The emotional fallout was brutal. I felt like I'd been sucker punched, like I was living someone else's nightmare. I couldn't eat, couldn't sleep. Every time I looked at her, I saw the lies, the betrayal. I started questioning everything. Our years together, the vows we took, the future I thought we were building. I was furious, hurt, and confused all at once. Part of me wanted to rage, to throw her out, to end it all right then. But I also felt this strange sense of numbness, like I was watching my life unravel in slow motion. I didn't cry, not yet, but I felt like I was dying inside. And then came the money. That was the real kick in the teeth. I'd always trusted her with our finances, but lately I'd noticed some odd transactions, small amounts here and there, nothing overtly suspicious, until I decided to dig deeper. I pulled out our bank statements, our credit card bills, and that's when I saw it. She transferred $250, $0 of our family estate to her brother, Mark, just weeks before she filed for divorce. I couldn't believe it. That kind of money doesn't just disappear. She lied about where it went, said it was a loan, a gift, anything but what it really was. She'd been planning her escape for months, probably since she started her affair. And now she had the nerve to claim ownership of our house and a 401k worth $400, $0. She's telling everyone she's entitled to half because she's been married to me all these years. But I know the truth. She's been manipulating the system, trying to steal what she thinks she's owed, all while she's been screwing around behind my back. It's like I was blind to her real intentions all along. I thought we had a partnership, a life together, but it turns out I was just a pawn in her game. I'm not a rich guy, but I worked my ass off to build what we have. I bust my ass at my job, put my savings into our future, and trusted her to be honest. Now I feel like I've been played for a fool. The betrayal hits deep, and I don't know how I'm supposed to move forward with this mess. I'm angry, I'm hurt, and I don't even know where to start fixing the wreckage she's left behind. But one thing's clear: I won't let her take everything without a fight. Not without exposing her lies, her cheating, and her greed. If you're wondering how I'm holding up, I'll tell you barely. But I'm learning slowly how to deal with the fallout. I've got a good lawyer now, and I'm gathering everything I can: proof of her affair, the money transfers, her attempts to claim ownership of everything. I don't want her to walk away with a dime more than she's entitled to legally. But emotionally, I'm shattered. I trusted her with my life, and she threw it all away for Ryan and her greed. It's a brutal lesson, but maybe it's one I needed to learn. After that night of discovering everything, I felt like my world had been flipped upside down. I kept replaying the moments, the lies, the betrayal, trying to piece together how I missed all the signs. It's like she was a ghost in our own house, moving around, hiding her secrets, all while pretending everything was fine. I couldn't sleep, I couldn't eat, and every time I looked at her, I saw the liar she had become. The next day, I started digging into the financials more thoroughly. I had to know exactly what she'd done behind my back. I pulled out our bank accounts, credit cards, and even her emails. That's when I found the transfer of $250, $0, to her brother, Mark. It was done just a few weeks before she filed for divorce. I couldn't believe it. All those years of saving, planning for our future, and she just handed a quarter of it over to her brother like it was loose change. That money was supposed to go toward our retirement, our kids' education, maybe even a new house someday. Instead, she used it as a pawn in her scheme. I confronted her again, this time with all the proof in hand. I sat her down in the living room, my hands trembling, trying to keep my voice steady. I showed her the bank statements, the transfer details, and I demanded she explain herself. She looked panicked at first, then started spinning her usual lies. She told me she was helping her brother, that Mark had some financial trouble and she was just trying to do the right thing. I called bullshit. No way she transferred that kind of money without me knowing. She said I was overreacting, that I was paranoid, that I didn't trust her, that she was just trying to help her family and I was the one causing trouble. But I wasn't buying it. I knew I was being played. She was lying and her excuses sounded hollow. I could see her eyes darting around, trying to come up with a story that would somehow make this okay. I told her I was done being blind, that I wanted the truth. That's when she finally snapped. She told me she was tired of my accusations, that I was controlling and insecure. She said I was suffocating her, and that maybe we should just get a divorce so she could be free. Yeah, she threw that out there like it was no big deal, like she didn't just steal a quarter of our savings and try to claim our house and 401k. The emotional impact hit me hard. It was like a punch to the chest. I felt betrayed, angry, and deeply hurt. I'd always believed in our marriage, in the vows we took. I thought we were partners, building a future together. Instead, I found out she'd been planning her escape for months, secretly screwing around and stealing from us to fund her plan. I felt like I'd been a fool, a naive fool who trusted the wrong person. I was furious at her, at myself, and at the world for letting this happen. But beneath all that rage, there was also a strange sense of loss. I realized I'd lost the woman I thought I knew. The woman who used to tell me I was her rock. The woman who once said she loved me more than anything. Now she was just a stranger, a manipulator, a liar. I couldn't understand how someone could turn so cold, so calculating, so selfish. It made me question everything about our life together. How many times had she lied? How many nights had she been with Ryan? How much of our life savings had she already spent or given away? My mind kept circling back to the money. That $250, $0 transfer was the biggest shock. It felt like she was trying to wipe her hands clean of us before she walked out the door. She knew she was going to leave, and she wanted to make sure her brother was taken care of. I couldn't believe she'd be so cold, so calculating. That money was supposed to be for us, for our future. Instead, She handed it to her brother like it was nothing, like she was buying his silence or loyalty. I started to think about her motivation. Was it just greed? Or was there something else? Maybe she thought she could get away with everything, leave me with nothing, and start fresh with Ryan. Or maybe she'd convinced herself that she was entitled to half of everything because she deserved a life of luxury after all these years. That's when I realized she'd been planning this for a while. The affair, the money transfer, the divorce, she'd orchestrated it all, and I was just a pawn in her game. Now I was stuck trying to figure out what to do next. I knew I couldn't trust her anymore, not with our money, not with our marriage, not with my heart. I called my lawyer and we started discussing what I could do legally. She was trying to claim ownership of our house and a 401k worth hundreds of thousands, and I knew I had to fight hard to protect what was mine. But the legal battle felt overwhelming. I had no idea how she'd managed to hide so much, or how much more she'd lied about. I kept asking myself, how did I miss all this? How did I let her get away with it for so long? The worst part is I still loved her. Even with everything she'd done, part of me wanted to believe she'd change, that maybe she'd come clean, own up to her mistakes. But deep down, I knew that wasn't going to happen. She was a liar, a manipulator, and a cheat. Still, I couldn't help feeling devastated. I had invested 10 years of my life into this woman, and she'd thrown it all away for Ryan and her greed. It's a bitter pill to swallow, realizing the person you trusted most in the world was capable of so much deception. Now I'm left with a mess I don't know how to clean up. I've got a lawyer, I've started gathering evidence, and I'm trying to stay calm. But inside, I feel raw, betrayed, and angry. I want her to pay for what she's done, to see her lose everything she's tried to steal from us. I don't know how this story ends, but I'm determined to fight for what's right. I just wish I'd seen the signs earlier, or maybe I wish I'd never trusted her at all. After I gathered all the evidence and confronted Emily again, things started escalating quickly. She was furious when I showed her the bank statements and the proof of the transfer to her brother. Her face twisted with anger, and she started shouting that I was overreacting, that I was just jealous of her family, and that I was trying to ruin her. She called me paranoid, controlling, and said I was making a huge deal out of nothing. I could see the lies bubbling up in her eyes, but I also saw the desperation. She knew she'd been caught, and she was trying to spin her way out of it. She started throwing accusations back at me, claiming I was the one cheating, that I had some secret life I wasn't telling her about. She said I was distant, that I didn't pay enough attention to her and the kids. That was a lie. I'd been working my ass off to provide for us, and I was exhausted. But suddenly, her story changed from helping her brother to I was just trying to make things better for everyone. As if her money transfer was some noble act. I told her it was a lie, that she was stealing from us and planning her exit for months. The more we argued, the more I realized how deep her lies ran. She kept insisting she loved me and was just trying to help her family, but her actions told a different story. She'd been sneaking around, hiding her phone, lying about her whereabouts, and secretly transferring tens of thousands to her brother. I felt like I'd been living with a stranger all along. The woman I married, the woman I trusted, was gone. In her place was someone cold, calculating, and willing to betray everything we built together. Her reaction to my accusations was classic Emily. She played the victim. She cried, told me I was hurting her, that I was ruining her reputation, and that I was making her out to be some kind of villain. She claimed she was doing everything for her family, that her brother needed help, that I didn't understand how tough her life was. It was all bullshit. I knew she was lying, trying to manipulate me into backing down, but I wasn't falling for it. I told her I'd have the truth, one way or another, and that her lies wouldn't hold up forever. The emotional toll was staggering. I felt a mix of rage, heartbreak, and total confusion. I had trusted her for so long, believed in our future, and now I was facing the reality that she'd been cheating, lying, and stealing from us all along. I couldn't believe I'd been so blind. I kept asking myself how I missed the signs, how I didn't see her secret meetings with Ryan, her secret transfers, her lies about her whereabouts. I kept replaying every argument, every moment I ignored the red flags, every time I brushed off her strange behavior. And then came the money issue again. I found out she transferred $250, $0 to her brother just weeks before she filed for divorce. That's a huge chunk of our savings, and it was gone without my knowledge. I couldn't understand how she thought she could get away with it. She claimed it was a loan, a gift, something she had to do for her family. But I knew better. I felt sick thinking about it, how she'd been secretly funneling money out of our account, planning her escape, all while pretending everything was fine. That's when I realized she'd been manipulating the system, trying to secure her future at my expense. The worst part, she's now claiming ownership of the house in a 401k worth around $400, $0. She's arguing that because we're married, she's entitled to half, even though she's been lying and cheating all along. She's trying to use our marriage to her advantage, thinking she can just walk away with everything she wants. But I know the law isn't that simple. I've been talking to a lawyer, and he's told me that her claims are weak, but it's going to be a fight. She's good at spinning stories, and I'm sure she's already trying to hide more money or assets. I can't help feeling betrayed on every level. The woman I married, the woman I loved, turned out to be someone I barely recognize anymore. She's manipulative, greedy, and willing to do whatever it takes to get what she wants. I keep asking myself, how did I miss all of this? How did I not see her true colors sooner? I trusted her with everything, my heart, our money, our future, and she's thrown it all away for Ryan and her. Greed, it's a crushing realization. Now I sit here, staring at the legal papers and bank statements, trying to make sense of the chaos. I know I have a long road ahead, fighting her for what's rightfully mine, protecting what's left of our assets, and trying to keep my sanity. It's not easy. Every time I think about her, I'm filled with a deep sense of loss and anger. But I also know I can't let her win. I have to fight for myself, for our kids, for what we built. Right now, I'm just trying to stay strong, even if inside I feel like I'm falling apart. The legal process has been a nightmare from the start. I never thought I'd need to hire a lawyer, but when I saw how Emily was trying to claim our house in the 401k, I knew I had to act fast. I found a good attorney, someone who specializes in divorce and asset protection. We sat down, went through all the evidence I had collected, proof of her affair, the money transfers, her attempts to claim ownership of everything. I felt a mix of relief and dread during that meeting. Relief that I finally had someone on my side, but dread because I knew how complicated and messy this was going to get. Emily's lawyer was already trying to spin her story, claiming she was entitled to half of everything because we were married for over 10 years. She's claiming that her contributions to the household and her care for the kids give her a right to half of the assets. But I pushed back hard, showing the court everything: her lies, the secret transfers, the affair. I wanted her to see that I wasn't going down without a fight. I told my lawyer I wanted to keep the house, the 401k, and the money she stole. I wasn't going to let her walk away with the lion's share of what we built. Meanwhile, Emily was trying to play the victim. She's claiming she's the one who's been hurt, that I've been controlling and emotionally abusive. That's her typical tactic: paint me as the bad guy while she's the innocent victim of circumstances. She's trying to turn her affair and theft into some kind of justification for her actions. Honestly, I was furious. I knew she was lying, using the same manipulative tactics she's always used. But I also felt helpless, knowing that legal battles take time and patience, and she's already trying to hide assets and spin stories to her advantage. The most frustrating part was how she kept trying to claim ownership of the house in the 401k. She's arguing that because we're married, she's entitled to half of everything, regardless of her betrayal. She's claiming she needs the house to support herself and the kids, even though she's been sneaking around, lying and stealing from us. I pointed out that the money she transferred to her brother was a clear sign she was planning her exit long before she filed for divorce, that she's trying to use the marriage as a shield to get more money than she deserves. But she's persistent, and her lawyer is good at confusing the issue with legal jargon. I've been trying to keep my emotions in check, but it's tough. Every time I think about the betrayal, my stomach turns. I see her face in my mind, her sneaky glances, her fake tears, her lies. It's like I'm living in a nightmare that I can't wake up from. I keep asking myself how I let it get this far, how I didn't see the signs earlier. But honestly, I was blinded by love and trust. I thought she was my partner, my soulmate. Turns out she was just a con artist, a manipulator, a thief. The financial mess is overwhelming. I've hired a forensic accountant to dig through her accounts, find every hidden asset, and trace where the money went. I want her to pay for everything she's stolen from us. I want her to be held accountable for her lies and her affair. I'm not backing down. I've already started documenting everything: texts, emails, bank transfers, even her sneaky trips with Ryan. I want the court to see the full picture: her deception, her greed, and her betrayal. But I also realize that this isn't just about money or assets. It's about trust, respect, and the life I thought we had. Every day, I wake up feeling more betrayed than the day before. The woman I loved, the woman I married, has turned into someone I barely recognize. I keep asking myself how I got here, how I didn't see the signs, how I let her manipulate me for so long. It's a bitter pill to swallow. Right. Now I'm focused on fighting for what's rightfully mine. I can't let her take everything without a fight. I'm prepared for a long legal battle, even if it drains me emotionally and financially. I want to make sure she doesn't get away with her lies, her affair, and her theft. She's trying to spin it so she's the victim, but I know the truth. I know what she's done, and I won't stop until justice is served. Honestly, I don't know what the future holds. I just know I have to stay strong for me, for my kids, and for whatever shred of integrity I can salvage from this mess. I've learned that trusting blindly can cost everything, and that sometimes the people closest to you can hurt you the most. But I also know I won't let her get away with destroying what we built. Not without a fight. The weeks that followed were a whirlwind of legal filings, meetings, and endless sleepless nights. Every day seemed to bring new surprises, new lies she was trying to hide, or new ways she was attempting to manipulate the system. Emily was relentless, calling our lawyer, trying to sway the judge, and pushing her narrative that she was the victim here. She kept insisting that she deserved half of everything because she'd sacrificed so much during our marriage, even though I knew deep down she'd already planned her escape long before she ever filed. I spent countless hours with my lawyer, going over every detail, making sure I had all my ducks in a row. I gathered every piece of evidence I could find: text messages between her and Ryan, bank statements showing the transfers, even her emails where she tried to justify her actions. I wanted the court to see the full picture: a woman who was dishonest, manipulative, and motivated by greed. My lawyer kept telling me to stay calm, to let the legal process do its work, but inside I was seething. How could she be so cold? How could she betray me, our family, and everything we'd built, just for some guy and a payday? One of the most shocking revelations came when her lawyer tried to argue that she was entitled to the house and the 401k based on marital contribution. She claimed that her role as a stay-at-home mom and her emotional labor gave her a right to a share of everything, even though she was cheating and stealing behind my back. I couldn't believe the audacity. I told my lawyer that her claims were ridiculous. She didn't contribute anything to our assets but her lies and manipulations. The house was bought with my hard-earned savings, and the 401k was built from my salary. I wasn't going to let her claim half of what I'd worked for. Meanwhile, Emily was trying to turn the tables on me. She'd call our kids, crying about how Dad was trying to ruin her, how he's so controlling, and how she just wanted to start fresh. It was all a lie. She was trying to paint herself as the victim, as if I was the villain who'd betrayed her. But I knew the truth. I knew she'd been planning her escape for months, cheating, stealing, and lying to everyone. She'd even tried to convince her family that I was some sort of monster, a controlling husband who didn't care about her. That was her way of trying to justify her actions. I remember sitting in the courtroom during one hearing, feeling like I was in some kind of nightmare. The judge was listening to her lawyer argue that she deserved half of everything because of marital contributions, and I could feel my blood boiling. I stood up and told the court that her claims were false. She'd lied to me, cheated on me, and stolen from us. I presented the evidence, showing her transfers and the affair. I told the judge that I wanted to protect what was mine and that she had no right to claim ownership of the house or the 401k. I had to fight for every inch, and I was determined not to let her walk away with everything. The emotional toll was relentless. I felt exhausted, drained, and angry all at once. Every day I was reminded of her betrayal, her lies, her cheating, her greed. It was like a heavy weight pressing down on me. I kept asking myself how I'd let it get this far, how I'd trusted her for all these years, only to find out she'd been lying and stealing behind my back. It was a crushing realization that the woman I loved was gone, replaced by someone cold and calculated. But in the midst of all this chaos, I also found a strange sense of clarity. I knew I had to keep fighting, not just for the money or the house, but for my dignity. I couldn't let her get away with using the marriage as a loophole to take everything I'd worked for. I was starting to see through her lies, her manipulations, and her schemes. I realized I needed to stand firm, no matter how hard it was. I'd lost her, but I wouldn't lose everything else: my integrity, my future, or my sense of self. I also learned that sometimes the only way to deal with a betrayal this deep is to confront it head-on. I've stopped trying to make sense of her actions. Instead, I focus on what I can control: my legal rights, my future, and my peace of mind. I've become more cautious, more guarded, but also more determined. I don't want her to win, not with her lies, her cheating, or her greed. I want justice. I want her to realize that her actions have consequences, and I won't let her walk away with everything she's stolen. Now, I'm just waiting for the final ruling. The court process has dragged on longer than I expected, but I know this battle isn't over yet. I've come to terms with the fact that my marriage is over, but that doesn't mean I have to lose everything. I've learned a hard lesson about trust, about being careful who I let into my life. And I've learned that sometimes the only way to fight back is to stand your ground and fight for what's right, no matter how much it hurts. The court date finally arrived, and I felt a strange mix of relief and dread. After months of fighting, gathering evidence, and dealing with Emily's constant attempts to manipulate the system, I was ready to see the judge lay down the law. I sat there in the courtroom, my stomach tight, as Emily sat across from me, her face a mask of smugness. She looked confident, sure she could walk away with everything: her lies, her affair, her stolen money, all justified in her mind. But I knew better. I had the evidence, and I was prepared to fight for what was rightfully mine. When the judge called the case, I laid out everything: proof of her affair, the transfer of $250, $0 to her brother, her attempts to claim ownership of the house and the 401k. I told the court how she'd lied, manipulated, and betrayed our vows, all for her own greed. I explained how she used her role as a stay-at-home mom as a shield to claim contribution, even as she was secretly planning her escape for months. I asked the court to recognize her dishonesty, her deception, and her theft, and to award me custody of our children, the house, and the assets I worked so hard to build. Emily's lawyer tried to argue that she deserved half of everything because of her contributions, but I pushed back hard. I presented the evidence of her secret transfers, her affair, and her lies. I reminded the court that her actions had irreparably damaged our marriage, and that her greed was the real reason she was trying to claim so much. I could see her squirm in her seat, realizing her web of lies was unraveling. In the end, the judge ruled in my favor on most counts. She ordered Emily to return the stolen $250, $0 to our joint account, denied her claim to the house and the 401k, and awarded me primary custody of our kids. It wasn't a perfect victory, nothing about this was easy, but it was enough to make me feel like I'd fought for what was right. I felt a huge weight lift off my shoulders, even as the emotional scars still stung deep. After the court, I sat outside on the steps, taking a deep breath. I looked back at the courtroom, at Emily, and felt a strange mixture of relief and sadness. I knew I'd lost the woman I loved, the woman I thought I knew, but I also knew I gained my dignity back. I had stood up for myself, fought for my future, and refused to let her steal everything I'd worked for. In the aftermath, I've been focusing on rebuilding my life. I've cut ties with Emily completely, moved out of the house, and started therapy to deal with the emotional fallout. My trust is shattered, but I'm learning to rebuild it, one step at a time. I've also become more cautious about who I let into my life. The betrayal cut so deep that I realize now how important it is to pay attention to the red flags early on. Looking back, I see this as a brutal lesson in trust, greed, and betrayal. I've learned that sometimes people you love can hurt you in ways you never expected, and that fighting for your rights and dignity is the only way to truly move forward. I still feel the sting of her lies, but I also feel a sense of closure. I know I did everything I could to protect what's mine, and that's enough to give me some peace. If there's one thing I want anyone reading this to take away, it's this: trust is fragile, and it's earned every day. Be careful with your heart and your money. Watch for the red flags and don't ignore your gut. Because when betrayal happens, it hits hard. And sometimes, the only way to come out on top is to fight with everything you've got. I did, and I'm proud of that. I may never fully recover from what's happened, but I'll keep moving forward, stronger and wiser than I was before.